What's up, guys? Frecky here again. So listen, we've done a couple of videos already, and we're gonna kind of step away from like the apprentice and the apprenticeship thing. I think it's kind of been covered and handled. However, this video that I'm gonna do is we're gonna kind of try and talk to employers, right? People that employ individuals for careers, for jobs, whatever the case may be. Now it seems though, even though we are in a progressive society, that there's still, some issues that we have, and a lot of times, being heavily tattooed kind of pigeonholes you into a certain category, right? So a lot of people think, well, he's got heavily tattoos or she's got heavily tattoos, therefore she's probably been on drugs or, been involved in crime, is in a gang, their past is sketchy, whatever the thought or the consensus might be. And I would think 90% of the time, you couldn't be any further from the truth. Tattooed individuals or individuals that are heavily tattooed have a unique perspective on life, in the sense that in order to be heavily tattooed, it requires extreme patience, mental fortitude, a physical strength. So if those are three things as an employer, which most employers I would think look for, that would be a reason right there to talk to that individual a little bit more and kind of understand where they're coming from. Because if you have two people sitting side by side and they both have the same resume, the same qualifications, the same experience, one happens to be heavily tattooed, one isn't, the one who isn't tattooed has just as much chance as failing as the individual who is heavily tattooed. But I will guarantee you the individual that is heavily tattooed is going to act and do a lot better under pressure, because they've already been in that situation, because it takes patience, discipline, and fortitude to sit down and get tattooed over a long period of time, right? And if they've got, a back piece, sleeves, leg pieces, whatever the case may be, they've had to endure a certain amount of fatigue, struggle, mental anguish. It's not easy to go in and sit in a tattoo chair for 5 hours and have an individual, repeatedly, inject you with ink, with a tattoo needle. It takes a lot of time, and it hurts, So I think if those are things that you look for as an employer, those are things that those types of individual already have. Now, I'm not saying everybody who's heavily tattooed is a saint. Far from it. But you know what? There's plenty of people out there who don't have a single tattoo who are just as guilty as sinning as everybody else. So I think as an employer, which I've both been a business owner and an employee, for the most part, the employees that have worked hardest for me and or that I have, worked with, tend to be, like I say, heavily tattooed and have a great sense of judgment and have a lot of intelligence. The reason being is if you're heavily tattooed, you're judged every day. There's no difference being heavily tattooed than it is to be of a certain ethnicity, so to speak. There's no difference. It's just the way that individual has chose to express themselves. Now, so you say, okay, fine, I understand that, and tattoos, I just I don't like them. I think they're senseless. I don't think they belong in the workforce, or it's a poor way to present yourself. All right, but what you got to realize is the majority of people that get tattooed, the reason they get tattooed for the most part is to mark a milestone, commemorate a loved one, um, to remember a specific memory. I mean, there's a lot of personal feelings that go into those tattoos, and I understand, well, it doesn't make sense to me to see someone with heavily tattooed. Well, you know what? Let's just say you play golf, and me, it doesn't make sense to me why someone would want to hit a golf ball with a iron stick multiple times and walk around the fairway for 8 or 10 hours. But that's just what you do to relax, express yourself, so on and so forth. Tattooed individuals are no different. They just choose to go get tattooed as opposed to play golf, whatnot, and what have you. So, again, it's kind of, I think it's unfair. And some people say, yeah, well, that's kind of the path you chose, and this, that, and the other. And it's true. It's very true. And for the most part, none of us are apologizing for it. And I'm not doing this on behalf of myself or for anybody else for that matter. I'm just trying to help you guys out and kind of give them an understanding as to, maybe your viewpoint or your idea of tattooed individuals might be askew. It might be off. It's not like it used to be. Not everybody who's heavily tattooed is in a gang. They're not, involved with drugs. They're not. They're just good, solid people that have a little bit more experience and maybe have endured harder times. And if you have, two individuals, like I said earlier, side by side applying for the same position and the same experience, there's really no reason not to give the individual who's heavily tattooed a shot. Now, obviously, if you're, in the position and you don't like that, or you don't want that appearance in your company, I get it. I understand that. I'm not saying, anything bad about it. All I'm saying is, I think a lot of people kind of have this certain perception of people that are heavily tattooed and how they are. And like I say, a lot of those perceptions are very wrong. And there are a lot of extremely intelligent people out there that are tattooed. They're not just, entertainers and sports and athletes. A lot of these people now, I've tattooed lawyers, judges, doctors, nurses, truck drivers, you name it, I've tattooed it. It doesn't really matter. And the interesting thing about it is like, when I talk to those individuals or whatnot or what have you, they're very much the same individual as me, and that's a common core. Like, I'm not saying that you got to go out and get like a gazillion tattoos to understand it, but the majority of people, I'm sure you'd find out, and you know what, I'd almost be willing to bet that if you were to put your staff together and ask who has tattoos, I would wage a bet that I would say almost half, maybe 3/4 of the people on your staff have at least one tattoo, right? Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's there or that's not there. So anyway, like I said, I'm not trying to change the world. I'm not trying to, tell anybody how to, look at individuals. Far from it. All I'm trying to do is provide some information and maybe give you a kind of different viewpoint, and a little bit more of an understanding as to, how tattooed individuals are. There's good and bad people in everything. It doesn't matter what it is, right? But I think, if you're looking for a leadership or a person to fill a leadership role or to take charge or something like that, or, do a test yourself. If you have a couple of people on your staff that are tattooed and you don't like talking to them or giving them time of day, I should say, talk to them. You'd probably be very surprised at what they know and what they're into and what they're interested in. So all I'm saying is, don't be too quick to judge. Give it a shot, and just open your barriers a little bit more, you know. And I think that you would be pleasantly surprised at what you will see and what you might find. Anyway, hope this maybe shine some light on the subject a little bit, maybe give you a little bit new insight about hiring people. Until next time, I wish everybody all the best. Hope this information helped. From the Texas Viking, peace.